Hi, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here. Your hospitality is really amazing. We had a great time yesterday with the science, yesterday evening for the dinner, and yesterday finish with me and Chloe going back home on a tuk-tuk. And this was an experience that we will never forget. So I am Alessia. I am a professor of fungal biology at the University of Kent. I'm here probably as a representative of Kent academics. So what I really would like to stress before I start my talk is that really we are here to strengthen the interaction between biotech Thailand and Kent. We have a long history of interaction. I learned yesterday that here in the audience there is a former PhD student of a mentor of mine, Mick Tute. So I hope that this will continue for a long time. So please, if you today or when you go back home, if you want to reach out, please, this is my email address. Send me an email. I might be able to help you with the science, or I might be able to connect you to somebody who can help you with the science. I have as many scientists after the American election. I migrate away from Twitter, and we now use Blue Sky. So this is now my Blue Sky contact. So please, you can also contact me on Blue Sky. So I am a scientist, but today I'm not going to talk to you about my scientific projects, but I'm going to talk to you about my experience to interact with industrial partners. I do believe there are many reasons why people in science want to interact with industry. You might be a younger a scientist that is thinking about to move from academia to industry, or like me, you might be a more older, established scientist. And as you all know, I think it's the case in Thailand, as is in the UK, there is a push more and more to do translational research. And I hope that by sharing my journey, I can give you an idea of how to interact with the business. Or you might be a person that is thinking to start a startup. And we heard yesterday, I think, a very inspiring talk about DAY that I think convinced all of us that maybe it's not too difficult to start a startup. And I interact with DAY and I will discuss with you. Okay. So, yes. So such a background first. Why I'm here talking to you about interaction of industry, just as a little snapshot where I am now with industry. I am the scientific advisor of and sitting on the board of two biotech company, Lab and what do I do? Oh, just a bit slow. Is that one okay? I am, as I was saying, the scientific advisor of two companies, Lab and Nutrison. I am on the panel member of the main funding body in the UK, the BBSRC, UKRI. And my lab is collaborating with a large range of companies. I give you a snapshot of some of them, but actually there is more than that. So with this in mind, it's actually quite, I think actually I am the most unlikely person to interact with the company if you see my scientific journey that I wanted to share with you. So I did a PhD in Germany working on fruit flies. And we were working on a phenomenon called the dosage compensation. We were looking at the chromatin structure of sex chromosomes. And I don't want you to understand this graph that comes from one of my papers, but just to appreciate it, I was really deep into the molecular mechanism of dosage compensation, really understanding which molecule did what. And then I moved to do a series of postdoctoral research, first in Edinburgh, then in Oxford, and then in Israel, where actually I was working with Pombi, and I was working on centromere structure in Pombi. And again, I do not want you to understand this summary of one of my paper, but again, I wanted to understand that again, I was very deep into the basic research, molecular details, if you like, of centromere formation in Pombi. And this is really carry on also when I start my own lab at the University of Kent, and this is still actually the case at Kent itself. In Kent, when I moved to Kent, I decided to move to two organisms that are probably more relevant to the industry. One being a pathogen, Candida albicans, and one, as you heard yesterday, a microorganism with a biotechnology potential, as stipidis. And this is my lab a couple of months ago. And in the lab, we are interested in understanding how large changes in genome and genome structure affect the biology of those two mechanisms. And again, we are really focusing on understanding the basic molecular mechanisms that govern the biology of these two organisms. And I just want to make it think clear here. I think the basic biology and curiosity-driven biology is extremely important as a place in science. And I will keep on doing curiosity-driven research as long as I can. However, at the same time, and I think we have a discussion yesterday at dinner as well with some of the speaker, at the same time, there is an expectation from our government to deliver translational research. And I don't disagree actually with this, because although I do love curiosity-driven research, sometimes I struggle to justify to my friend that they're not scientists, or to my family, of why I spend their money to understand something so basic. So how, with this background, how do I get into industrial relevant research? I got in there because of this man, and many of you know him. This is Professor Colin Robinson. He had a GCRF grant with biotech, as a long relationship with you guys. And now, almost 5 years ago, Colin was the head of the department where I was working. And me and Colin are very different in many ways, but we have one thing in common. We absolutely love writing grants. This is the one thing that really united us. In addition, we also know that really grants writing is a number games. So you just write your grants. In UK, at least, the statistic is you get 1 in 5 grants. So you had to write 5 grants to get 1. So when 5 years ago, Colin came to me and said, oh, look, there is this institution, NIAB EMR, that is planning to submit a large grant, was a large consortium between different academic institutions and different companies, to submit a bid on doing translational research on the food and drink sector. And NIAB EMR approached Colin to have Kent as a partner on this grant. And we just say, yeah, why not? We like writing grant. We will never get it. Let's apply. Of course, what happened was we got it. So at that point, me and Colin found ourselves with this very large grant. We're talking about, I think that is 5 years program, £4 million just for Kent. And we need to deliver translational research in the food and drink sector. However, yes, so the aim of the grant, the delivery of the grant were very ambitious. We were asked to interact with more than 200 businesses. We were asked to leverage additional £2 million of funding. And we are asking as a consortium to bring 10 new products to market. However, the reality was, and I'm going to be very honest with you here, this is pretty much me and calling experience with the food and drink sector. We like to be together, we are good friends, and we like to have dinner together, but we had no experience actually whatsoever in doing research in the food and drink sector. So really, at that point, I found my way. So as a basic researcher, I found myself in a position to have to reinvent myself and to find a way to deliver on this grant. I also thought that was, for me, a great opportunity. As I say, for a long time, although I love basic research, a bit of a struggle to find relevance to my research. So I took it as an opportunity to, again, transform myself from a basic researcher to somebody that interact with companies. And this is really what I wanted to share to you today, kind of my journey, my way to actually get into this, and perhaps can be helpful for you as well. So I think when you talk about interaction with industry, I think you can divide it in 3 stages. If you start from a completely naive person, like I was, you need to really define your interest and what do you offer to the industry. You need to find a way to constructively establish a team, and you need to find a way to manage long-term interaction with your industrial partners. And I will, as I say, share what it meant for me, each of these 3 steps. So let's first start with the first, define your interest and offer. So when I started, I kind of knew that I had a general interest in what probably we can call green tech. But what green tech meant and how I could contribute to the sector was really unclear to me. So what I've done was to try to understand the landscape by attending as many networking meetings as possible. And when we talk about a networking meeting, there are really 3 types of meetings that you can attend. There are online meetings that are probably the first one that I would attend with industrial, they are done on purpose to bridge the industrial sector and the academic sectors. And this is probably the first one that I would do. I would attend as much as possible to understand really the language, to understand how business talk, because it can be very different from academic way of talking. The next stage is to go to, again, a network meeting, but organized by academics. In that case, you will have lots of academics, but some industrial partner, again, is useful to understand the language. And the last set of meetings are actually the one organized by the industry themselves. This is where the investor will be, all the big company will be, all the small company will be. Those meetings are amazing, but they are very expensive. So I would suggest to go to those meetings only just when you have what I was saying, your offer well defined. So, so this is what I've done. I just give you some picture here. I went to as many meetings as possible. Many of them were absolutely waste of time, but some of them were useful, and it really helped. The majority of this meeting, initially, I was really just a passive person attending, to really just understanding again what the field want. In my case, the food and drink sector field wanted, and how they were talking. So thanks to attending so many meetings, I was able to define my offer. And I was saying, and I think this is the case, especially when you interact with the business, language matters. So before starting to, and I'll give you an example. It's a silly example, but I think it's really telling. Before starting to interact with any industry, my title was a professor in fungal epigenetics. Now, when I was telling to people that I was a professor in fungal epigenetics, they were looking at me like, what the hell? What does it mean even? So I decided, I learned that to simplify my language can bring you a long way. So I am now a professor in fungal biology. That is not a lie, it tells exactly what I am, but is a less academic jargon that business can appreciate and understand more. The second important thing was finding your niche. So as I was saying, I was interested in the large green tech sector. What did it mean? And especially what could I offer? I had 10 years experience work on fungi. So I thought that giving experience in fungal biology would have been important for the sector. And I identified alternative protein, development of novel food that is nutritional and sustainable was something a sector I could contribute. So at this stage, therefore, my niche from the general green tech term was really focusing on finding business that were interesting in developing novel fungal platform for alternative protein production. So already my sector was now very well defined. The other thing, as I was saying, was define your offer. I had expertise in epigenetics and RNAi and chromatin modification. Again, this meant very little to any industrial partner I was talking to. But for doing this in the lab, we are doing daily genome engineering, genetic editing, and company like that. So when I talk to company, I don't talk about chromatin, I don't talk about epigenetics, but I tell them, we can help you with the genome editing. We can help you to understand the diversity between different strains. And this means something. So there is one thing that often people come to me, academic, and say, oh, look, I really want to interact with business. I have this fantastic project. Can you find a business can work with me? Unfortunately, it doesn't work in this way. You need to flip it. You need to understand what the business needs and need to understand how you can use your expertise to help the business. The business is not going, any company is not going out of the way to redevelop the business plan because you have a fantastic idea. It's the other way around. We have to see how we can help them. So this is how I define my offer and how I learn to simplify my language. So what did I learn? I mean, it was not, although here seems very, very straightforward, actually, it was actually a long process to try to understand. And so what did I learn from that? Which tips can I share? I think what is important is to manage your time and budget well. As I was saying, some of these networking meeting can be very expensive. Travel can be expensive. So it is things that you had to take in consideration. And as I was saying, many of these meetings were an absolute waste of time, but you had to do it. I would suggest as a first stage to prioritize online events. If you are interested in the food and drink sector, there is this fantastic institution, it's called the Good Food Institute, that do organize weekly workshop with the industry online or with academic expert. And it's a very good way to start to connect with the sector. In the second stage, I would suggest to go to in-person, but local event. It's very tempting to go to some fantastic SynBio conference in the States, very tempting. But the reality is that you are more likely to work well with people that they are local to you. That's the reality, because you can build a relationship that goes way beyond working with a company in the States. So, and again, this helps the budget, right? as I was saying, it's important to identify what the business needs, what the sector needs. In our case, when I was talking to business, it was clear that from what I could help with, there were two things that people were really keen into. One, identify new strain, and the second, doing genome editing. So that was identify the offer, and as I was saying, have a clear and a simple offer in your mind before you contact the business. There is no point, it's perfectly fine to just do a cold call to business, but there is no point to call them and then confuse them with academic jargon. We need to be very, very simple and very clear. Okay, so the second stage is establish the team. There are a few things that you have to consider when you think of establish the team. An interaction with a small versus a big business is very different, both for you as an academic, that for the business. As I say, make your offer clear. You can apply with grants with the business, or you can do some consultancy work or some contract work. Make from the very beginning your expectation clear. Talk clearly about IPs, about freedom to operate very earlier on. And try to interact as a business. Over and over again, I hear the business do not want to interact with academics because they have this idea that we are just there dreaming about big picture and not doing very much. So make sure that you interact as a business. If you promise to follow up with an email, follow up straight away. If you promise to write a grant for them. And this is a real game changer. Once they realize that they can work with you, is a game changer, I think. So just as very small highlight of what it means to interact with a large business versus a small business. From an academic point of view, it is nice to interact with a large business because you don't have to write grants. Most of the time, they give you the money to conduct a piece of work. So that's great from one side. You also have the opportunity to interact and network with people in the business. On the other side, you have actually very little to say about the project, and you understand very little of the process behind the project. From a large business point of view, I think the main reason they want to interact with us is because they want to access to talent. The majority of the time when we interact with a business, the postdoc that is employed into this contract work goes and work to the business. So I think this is the main reason why they want to do it. In addition to interact with academic expertise and use our facilities. Partnership with small business is different, very different. From academic point of view, they tend not to have any money. Small startups have no money, but they are very keen in writing grants with you. So it is good to build your profile because you can prove that you are successful in writing grant. You also tend to be much more involved in the business size of the business. So you end up understanding more the business landscape and you interact with investor. And I think this is great to understand again what investor looks for. From a business point of view, again, in this case, it's very important. They have access to academic expertise and to our facility. This is very important because small startups normally have a budget that is limited and an R&D capacity that is limited as well. So I just want to give you, share with you my interaction with two business. One is the company I was talking yesterday, Hair Lab. They are a small startup working on precision fermentation. Again, here is the language. Precision fermentation means recombinant protein production for the food and drink sector. After interacting with them, I was the CSO of the company. I was directing the R&D department of the company. And the company R&D was actually, they decided to move it to Kent, so I could oversee their activity. And we wrote and be successful in writing 2 Innovate UK grants. The second company I am a scientific advisor from is a seaweed company called Nutrisan. We wrote and we were successful of writing 2 BBSRC grants. And initially we were having a collaborative project to understand whether seaweed could be used for antifungal productions. So can I give you some tips on how to establish the team? First and most important, you have to work with people that you like. This is a picture of me and Day at the pub, and this is us with Nutrisan in Vietnam in an opera house events. As I say, you have a clear plan. If you interact with small business, you need to write the grants. Really, there is no way around. They can help on the business side, but you need to write the science. And this is, I think, is very clear. Try to not overcommit and have a clear short-term, mid-term, and long-term plan on your interaction with the business. Because this brings me to the final point of my stage of interaction is how to manage long-term interaction. So I think the story with the Hair Lab is particularly interesting from my side. Because we were so successful, Hair Lab, thanks to the BBSRC grant that they were successful in getting their pre-seed investment. And this has allowed them to really grow as a company and define their offer more. And they decided to move from the food sector to the cosmetic and tissue engineering sector, and they just open up their seed investment funding. This is from one side that was actually bringing me away from where I wanted to be. At the same time, again, thanks to interaction with our lab, us as academic, we were also very successful. We got 2 follow-up big consortium grants. One led, both of them by Imperial. One is a big UKRI grant, and also we were involved in the Bezos funded Alternative Protein Institute. Because of those 2 grants, we really are now interacting with what I call a tsunami of companies. There are 82 companies in the consortium, and 82 companies we want to interact with. Because of this, what we decide to do is for me to move away from CSO, from our lab, to a scientific advisor position. This gives me the freedom to operate, interact with more company, and gives the Hair Lab the freedom to develop in a different sector as well. Their R&D activities are still based at University of Kent, but I say I will act as advisor and not anymore as a PI, if you like. And we still collaborate in non-core projects. So this is an example of how interaction with the industrial partner can evolve. It's a dynamic process, and it can evolve, and it can be useful for both people. And with Nutrisan, it also moved, but I'm still the scientific advisor. So what happened thanks to this interaction? Michelle, the co-founder of Nutrisan, is now honorary academic at the University of Kent. Is also a mentor for Growing Kent and Medway. And they open up a new factory in Zanzibar where they need to train a whole set of new talent. So what we decided to do is to establish a master by research program where employees from Nutrisan come to Kent and get trained. From Kent side, thanks to interaction of Nutrisan, I'm really now acting. I don't really do research with them very much anymore, but I'm really acting as a middle woman between Nutrisan and other researchers. Kent, for example, Chloe, Charlotte here collaborated with Nutrisan, and we have other academics that interact with Nutrisan. They are also collaborating on the two big grants that we just got. And as I was saying, from a Kent perspective, it is very appealing to be able to establish this Master by Research program because it comes with additional funding for international students, of course. So in managing long-term interaction, what I think is important, just one thing, be flexible and open. Be very clear that the interaction with an industry is dynamic. So I'm just left with a summary of what I think is important to interact with industry. And now my time is up. No question. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Alessia, for your interesting talk and sharing many tips to build the team as well. And now I think we have time for one question. One question. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for a very interesting presentations. I have a questions because like most of the times you're talking about like how you're gonna prepare yourself for that is from our personal side that how we should prepare for the opportunity like business opportunity. But how about the other side? Do you think like the system, I mean like the university system and the policy and the grant also has an influence on how to support scientists to translate their research into industry as well? And what is the role of the government and university from based on your opinions that they should do to support scientists who want to translate their research? Yes, thank you.
Yes, and no. In the sense that I think many universities have an innovation officer or some institution. They are very helpful, I think, at two-stage to build the initial interaction, to say, so I write to them and say, look, this is my profile, this is what I'm looking for, can you find business for me? And they make the initial call for me. But after that, the business want to interact with the expert. And a second stage, they are very important. When you write grants that you have to write, there's no way around, I think, they're very good in helping with the budget. So I think in terms of institutional help, it's almost a transactional help, if you like. The reality is the company wants to interact with the scientist. They are not going to interact with the institution. So they can facilitate, but I think, the main drive has to come from the academic because this is what the company are looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we still have enough time for one question. Hi. Thank you, Professor, for inspiring talk. I have one question for the very beginning, like person who like want to get into the business or startup. So what is the character, could you please suggest what is the character of science recovery that is impact enough to like to push into the startup or business? Because sometimes we think it's good, but when go to business it's not like impact enough.
So this is what I was trying to say. I think when you interact with a business, it's two stage. The first stage, you're really just a listener, where you try to understand what the business need. And then I almost went home and kind of thought, well, wait a minute, how can I help? Is there anything I can help with? Certain things I couldn't at all. So I knew that there was no way. But for me, everything has to do with genome editing, anything I could say, I could help. So then you go back to the business. I think really language matters. You go back to the business, and sometimes you really have the same offer, but you have to say in a very simple way. I mean, just to put things in perspective, the two companies I'm working with, they are not scientists at all. So if I start to talk about transgene, GMO, they just freak out, to be honest. So you really need to simplify your offer. And so I do not believe none of our science is impactful. For all of us, it doesn't really matter how specific or in a molecular pathway you are in, it is impactful and can be useful. But it is a problem, I think, sometimes academic. We are so much into our little field that it's difficult for us to step back and see what are the big questions. And the business want to hear about the simple general approach. I mean, we are experts in our field, and nobody can do what we can do. And I think we should be aware of our strengths.
I think we have one question from online.
Sure.
Yeah. This is a question from online. Can you give us tips on how to convince university administrators to push or create ecosystem for translational research that will be benefit the scientists in the academics? So,
yes, I think, and I don't know if it's just a Kent, UK, I think, university just really wanted to listen to one word, money.
yeah.
So if you can convince them that by diversifying your offer, you can bring additional funding, they are on board. So again, I can't talk about Thai funding, but for us, any grant that we bring in, they are fully economic costed. So for any grants that comes to my lab, there is a percentage of money goes to the university. The bigger the grant, the more the pot of money that go to university. And sometimes I really, again, build a business case for them to really lay out how much additional money I bring and how much more just hiring one person from the university, how much more I would be able to bring to the university. So again, I think interacting with the university is almost like interacting with a business, build a business case.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. I think the same thing in Thailand. So,
yeah. So I think in a way, as academic, we have to start to think that we are in our own business. You know, we are in our own business. So we bring as much as we want. So I think we have to be aware of what we offer to academic institutions.
Thank you.
Thank